Two statements came out of Washington in the last 24 hours that tell you everything about where this war stands if you know how to read them together. The first came from the Pentagon. Today will be the most intense day of strikes inside Iran yet. More fighters, more bombers, more sorties, better intelligence than any day since this campaign began. The second is a data point that got far less attention. In that same 24-hour window, Iran fired the lowest number of missiles it has launched on any single day of this conflict. Put those two facts side by side, and you are looking at two completely different interpretations of the same war. Washington sees a broken enemy running out of ammunition. But there is another reading, one that should make you deeply uncomfortable, which is that Iran is deliberately conserving what it has left for a longer fight, while the United States burns through munitions, fuel, and operational tempo at a rate that cannot be sustained forever. And nowhere is that tempo more visible, more relentless, and more physically punishing than in the 21-mile stretch of water where this war's real outcome is being decided. The Strait of Hormuz right now is not a shipping lane. It is an active combat zone. Nearly 20% of the world's oil supply is supposed to flow through this corridor every single day. And for the past several weeks, it has been choked to a fraction of normal traffic. Commercial vessels sit at anchor outside the passage, their operators unwilling to risk transit while the shooting continues. Insurance companies have pulled war risk coverage. The tankers that do move are doing so under military escort or not at all. Meanwhile, the threat environment inside the strait is constant and multidirectional. Iranian fast attack boats staging from coastal harbors, drone launches from concealed positions along the shoreline, mines that may or may not have been seeded in shipping channels, coastal missile batteries with overlapping fields of fire across the narrowest sections, all of it operating in waters so confined and so cluttered with commercial infrastructure that the margin between routine patrol and full engagement is measured in seconds, not minutes. And the platform holding the line in that environment more than any other single asset is the AH-64 Apache. Meanwhile, please leave your questions or comments in the comment section. I will answer each one individually as time permits. Also, I would be very happy if you liked the video and subscribe to my channel. Now, let's continue. I want to walk you through what that actually looks like operationally, because the way these machines are being used in the strait right now tells you something critical about modern warfare that press conferences and Pentagon briefings will never convey. This is not a story about a helicopter. It is a story about what it takes to maintain continuous armed dominance over a contested waterway when the threats never stop coming and the tempo never drops. Before an Apache flies a single mission in the Gulf, it has to get there. These are not small aircraft you can load onto a transport ship and roll off a ramp. They arrive inside massive cargo planes, folded and secured for transit, landing at forward air bases across the region. The moment the ramp opens, ground crews move in. The helicopter is guided out with the kind of care you would expect for something that costs over $30 million and is about to fly into combat within hours. Every panel gets opened. Every system gets inspected. Engines tested, avionics checked, targeting systems calibrated. There is no shortcut in this process because the smallest overlooked fault becomes a catastrophic problem when you are flying 30 feet above the Gulf at night with live weapons and an Iranian drone inbound. Then comes the loadout, and this is where the cost of sustained operations becomes tangible. Hydra rockets racked and secured on the weapons pylons. Hellfire missiles, at over $100,000 each, mounted on the stub wings. The 30mm chain gun fed with ammunition belts that have to be seated perfectly because a misfeed at the wrong moment means you are defenseless over hostile water with no backup plan. Every connection point is verified by hand. Every weapon is checked against the mission profile. And every loadout represents a draw on an inventory that is being consumed faster than it can be replenished from stateside stocks. The crews doing this work are not operating on normal schedules. They are running around the clock in rotations designed to keep aircraft turning over as fast as physically possible, because the operational demand in the strait right now does not have an off switch. Once an Apache is mission ready, the cycle begins and it does not stop. A patrol goes out over the water. The crew flies low, scanning for threats, Iranian fast boats staging near the coast, unidentified surface contacts moving through shipping lanes, drone signatures appearing on sensors. When the patrol ends, The helicopter comes back to a forward position, often a Navy vessel operating in the Gulf, and the moment it touches down, the turnaround starts. Fuel lines connected. Systems given a rapid check. Weapon status confirmed. No downtime, no pause, because the next alert could come before the crew has finished their post-flight checklist. Landing on a moving ship in the middle of the Persian Gulf is its own kind of controlled violence. The deck is shifting. Wind conditions change constantly. The pilot brings the Apache down with a precision that looks smooth on video and is anything but in practice. Once down, the aircraft gets chained to the deck, systems held at ready status, weapons armed, engines capable of spinning to full power in seconds. It sits there like a coiled spring waiting for the word. And then the word comes. A radar contact appears. Something unidentified, moving fast and low across the water. The call goes out from the ship's combat center. Air support requested. There is no 20-minute briefing. There is no committee decision. The pilots move to the aircraft, engines ignite, rotors reach full speed, and the Apache lifts off the deck and heads directly into the threat. This is what continuous armed presence actually means. Not a theoretical readiness posture on a PowerPoint slide. A helicopter leaving a ship deck within seconds of a threat detection, guided by targeting systems that are already tracking the contact before the aircraft is fully airborne. Over the water, the crew locks onto the incoming target. In recent engagements, these have been Iranian drones, cheap, expendable, launched in numbers designed to probe and overwhelm. The Apache's targeting system tracks the drone, crosshairs stabilize, and the 30mm chain gun fires controlled bursts. Rounds close the distance in fractions of a second. Impact. The drone disintegrates before it reaches whatever it was aimed at, a tanker, a warship, a piece of infrastructure that the global economy depends on. There is no celebration in the cockpit. The crew immediately scans for the next contact because the operating assumption in the Strait right now is that threats come in sequences, not as isolated events. One drone down does not mean the sky is clear. It means the next one might already be airborne. The Apache turns back toward the fleet, lands on the deck again. Fuel lines reconnect. The ground crew checks weapons expenditure and reloads what was used. Systems get a rapid diagnostic, and the aircraft returns to ready status, waiting for the next scramble. Some missions cycle through this loop multiple times in a single shift. Launch, intercept, return, rearm, launch again. The human and mechanical toll of this rhythm is enormous. Pilots are flying in conditions that combine extreme heat, salt air corrosion, nighttime operations over featureless water, and the constant physiological stress of knowing that every sortie could involve live fire. The maintenance crews keeping these aircraft operational are performing work that normally takes hours in controlled environments and compressing it into minutes on a pitching ship deck. The Apache airframe itself is being stressed at rates that accelerate every wear point, engines cycling through more starts per day than peacetime training would produce in a week. This is the part of the war that never makes the highlight reel. The Pentagon will announce strike numbers. The White House will talk about degraded Iranian capability. Cable news will show missile footage and satellite imagery of destroyed targets. But the actual mechanism holding the Strait of Hormuz from sliding into complete chaos is this grinding, repetitive, physically brutal cycle of launch and recover happening around the clock on ship decks and forward bases across the Gulf. Every sortie costs fuel, maintenance hours, crew fatigue, and weapons inventory. Every day this continues, the operational burden compounds. And that brings me back to those two statements from the top. Washington says today is the most intense bombing day yet. Iran has fired its fewest missiles yet. The optimistic reading is that American strikes are working and Iran is running dry. But consider the alternative. The United States is escalating its tempo, burning through resources at an accelerating rate, while Iran reduces its expenditure to a minimum. If Iran is rationing rather than collapsing, if it is pacing itself for a conflict measured in months rather than weeks, then the side spending the most per day is not necessarily the side winning. It is the side whose clock is running faster. The Apache crews in the Strait do not have the luxury of debating which interpretation is correct. They fly the next mission. They shoot down the next drone. They land, refuel, rearm, and go again. The war they are fighting is not the dramatic, decisive, shock and awe campaign the public was promised. It is an endurance contest fought in 120-degree heat over hostile water against an enemy that keeps showing up with threats cheap enough to launch by the dozen and expensive enough to demand a response every single time. Each Iranian drone costs a fraction of what it takes to fuel, arm, launch, and recover the Apache that destroys it. Each sortie adds hours to the maintenance debt accumulating across the fleet. Each day of sustained operations pushes crew fatigue closer to the threshold where mistakes happen, and mistakes over the Strait of Hormuz do not stay local. A tanker hit, an escort ship damaged, a commercial vessel struck by a drone that slipped through. Any of those events sends oil markets into immediate convulsion, and the economic shockwave reaches American gas pumps within days. That is the reality of maintaining control over the most critical waterway on Earth in the middle of an active war. Dominance is not a moment. It is a machine that has to run without stopping, and right now, every gear in that machine is under strain. The question nobody in Washington wants to answer is how long the machine can keep running at this pace before something gives.